What does this super strange brain-like fruit, extinct giant ground sloths, and primitive style wooden bows all have in common? The answer to that question is an interesting native tree called the Osage orange, Maclura pomifera, an evolutionary anachronism that was nearly lost forever at the end of the last ice age. So how do the three very different things I mentioned have the same, somewhat strange native tree in common? That is what we're about to find out as we dive deep into the weird and wonderful world of the Osage orange, which gets its common name from the Native American Osage Nation, which valued it as a superior bowwood, and the large yellow-green fruits which somewhat resemble citrus fruits. It is often referred to as hedge, bowwood, bowdark, bois d'arc, and is a tree that can be found across most of the eastern U.S. except for the extreme northeast and Minnesota and much of the western U.S. But this was not always the case, and it is now considered non-native over much of the range it occupies. To understand why this is, we must go back tens of thousands of years prior to the last glacial maximum, that point when the glaciers extended the farthest south. At that time, Osage orange also had a wide range in North America and could be found across much of what is now the eastern U.S. all the way north to Minnesota. By the end of the last ice age, that range was reduced to a tiny sliver in what is now eastern Oklahoma, down into parts of Texas and southwestern Arkansas, and possibly northwestern Louisiana. This is not something unique to Osage orange. Many plants experienced range reductions at that time. The now extinct in the wild Franklin tree is another great example. Those species with easily dispersed seeds were able to quickly expand their ranges again, but the Osage orange was stuck with no way to disperse its seeds long distances because its seed dispersal method had been eliminated. More on this when we get to the super weird fruits of the Osage orange. So how did these trees expand from this remnant range to reoccupy most of their former range and even beyond? It was accomplished through human intervention because, as it turns out, Osage orange is useful to humans in several ways, which we will discover as we discuss some of the natural history of this amazing tree. Osage orange is a medium-sized tree that can grow to be 25 to 70 feet tall with a 25 to 60 foot spread at maturity, but it is usually at the smaller end of that range. It has a rather short trunk that is often bent or twisted, and multi-trunk trees are not uncommon. The crown is rounded and open, with some trees having branches that arch toward the ground. Overall, the form of trees grown in the open is quite pleasing, and Osage orange is sometimes planted as a specimen tree due to its character-filled growth form. It usually grows as a single tree, but may root sucker if the roots are injured or disturbed by heavy machinery, agricultural tilling, or flooding. Coppicing Osage orange, or cutting it to the ground, will also induce an incredible stump sprouting and root sprouting response that can create a nearly impenetrable hedge. This sprouting response and the fact that the tree is covered in sharp, hard spines led settlers to plant it as a living fence. These Osage hedgerows were first planted to keep free-ranging livestock out of crop fields and later to keep livestock in dedicated pastures. Due to its short, often twisted or bent trunk, it is not an important lumber species, but its dense, hard, straight-grained, bright yellow hardwood is used for many things. Osage orange heartwood is one of the hardest North American woods and is often considered the most rot-resistant species in North America. It is also essentially termite-proof. Because of its ability to resist rot and insect damage, Osage has been used for fence posts that often outlast the wire strung on them and was also used as railroad cross ties. Due to its vibrant yellow color, it is commonly used for knife handles, game calls, and is popular with wood turners, although its hardness can be rough on tools. A historical use that has continued today is the use of Osage for making wooden bows. The wood is not only hard, but exceptionally elastic and resistant to bending damage, and was revered by some Native Americans for making wooden self-bows. The art of making these bows is still alive and well today, and Osage is considered the king of North American bowwoods. The common names bowwood, bowdark, and bois d'arc all stem from this tree being used to make bows. The dense wood has the highest BTU rating of any North American species and makes premium firewood. The bright yellow heartwood and the roots and bark is a source of a natural dye called Maclurin, which produces a bright, color-fast yellow that was used extensively in World War I to produce khakis and greens on military uniforms. If you love to learn about super strange native trees like the Osage orange, be sure to pollinate that like button. Osage orange is not picky when it comes to soil and will grow in a wide variety of soil textures, from sandy soil to heavy clay and even extremely rocky soil, and it can handle wet to occasionally dry soil. The only thing Osage will not tolerate is highly acidic soil. It grows and looks its best in full sun. It can grow in the shade, but its form will suffer and it will be shorter, more open, and resemble a large gnarled shrub more than a tree. Due to the ability of Osage orange to grow in just about any soil conditions, and its spreading root system and resistance to wind damage due to its flexible, strong wood, it was planted widely by the WPA in the 1930s in shelterbelts to block the wind and combat soil erosion. This government-supported planting greatly increased the occurrence of Osage orange across the United States. The foliage of Osage orange is quite attractive. The leaves are from 2.5 to 5 inches long and 1.5 to 2.5 inches wide and are ovate to lanceolate in shape, which is plant nerd for they are shaped like an egg or a spear point. The upper leaf surface is a pleasing dark green and smooth. The lower surface is a contrasting light green and maybe slightly fuzzy. The leaf margin or leaf edge is entire and not toothed, although some leaves may have slightly wavy edges. The petiole or leaf stem is 1 to 2 inches long. A leaf that is torn will exude a sticky white latex sap, which is one of the key characteristics for IDing Osage orange, and is a trait it shares with most other plants in the Moraceae, the Mulberry family to which it belongs. Leaf arrangement on the stems is alternate. Osage orange has excellent fall color in shades of bright yellow. Osage orange foliage is a host plant to at least 2 caterpillars. The small inchworm-like caterpillars are the fruit tree leaf roller moth that feeds on several tree species, and a specialist that only eats Osage foliage, the bright green spike-tailed caterpillars of the impressive Osage orange Sphinx moth, also known as Hagen's Sphinx moth. This is a super cool looking moth, and the newly emerged adults have an awesome green and gray camouflage looking coloration. Interestingly, the caterpillars of the domestic silk moth, known for eating the leaves of the white mulberry, will also feed on Osage orange foliage if offered to them. The white latex sap is bitter and tends to keep herbivorous mammals from browsing Osage orange, but deer will absolutely hammer new growth Osage stump and root sprouts. I am always referring to caterpillars and host plants in these videos, and if you are looking for an easy-to-use guide to which caterpillars eat which plants, I highly recommend David Wagner's Caterpillars of Eastern North America. This is a book in the Princeton Field Guide series, and it is super easy to use. You can look up host plants by comment or scientific name. Same with caterpillars, moths, and butterflies. It is easily one of the top 5 used books in my library, and I know you will love it too. I will put a link to it in the description. This is an affiliate link, which simply means we get a commission if you purchase the book. No extra cost to you. We simply get a small commission from the seller, which helps support the channel. Osage orange has light brown bark with obvious ridges and fissures. The ridges may be straight, curved, or even forked, and the bark becomes rougher with age and may split and flake to expose the bright orange inner bark. The roots also have bright orange bark and are obvious when exposed by digging or by the flowing water of a creek or ditch. The bark and the heartwood contains a high concentration of tannins and was once used by the Native Americans and settlers to tan animal hides. The bark and roots are also a source of the yellow dye Maclurin. The new growth is green and smooth with scattered white lenticels, those wart-like bumps on bark. Older twigs are orange-brown to gray-brown, smooth, have scattered lenticels, and zigzag somewhat. Stout, 1/4 to 1 inch long spines grow at the leaf axils. Cutting a twig will reveal thick, white latex sap. The spines of Osage orange are what made it a great choice for living fence back in the day, and they are also the reason it makes excellent escape, resting, and nesting cover for a multitude of songbird and game bird species, such as the northern bobwhite, as well as small mammals. Although Osage orange is best known for being planted as a living fence, it is an attractive tree with a pleasing form, beautiful foliage, and great fall color, and is occasionally planted as a specimen tree in landscaping situations. Of course, the stout thorns and heavy crop of large fruits that don't smell great as they break down is a huge mark against them as landscape trees. There are, however, male cultivars, such as Park and Wichita, that don't produce fruit and are thornless that make great yard trees. Osage orange is a dioecious species, meaning there are separate male and female trees. Blooms appear on the trees from May to June, depending on location, and are wind pollinated. The male flowers are small, around 1/8 of an inch long, and form in 1 to 2 inch long racemes that arise in the leaf axils. The female flowers are even smaller and form in 3/4 to 1 inch in diameter round clusters that appear hairy due to the long thread-like stigmas. Female flowers arise singly or in groups of 2 or 3 in the leaf axils. The female flower clusters are super cool looking and resemble the koosh balls that were all the rage back in the 90s. Which brings up a question. What was your favorite fad from the 90s? Let us know down in the comments. If you don't have one, then put some butterfly emojis in the comments to help this video get shown to more people. I really do appreciate it. For me, it was the grunge look because I was a wildlife biology major at the time, so we were already dressing in flannel, beat-up jeans, hiking boots, and stocking caps, so it's kind of our everyday uniform. It was the only time in my life I was ever considered in style. The female flowers develop into large, 4 to 6 inch diameter, bright yellow-green fruits with a brain-like texture that ripen in September and October depending on location. Interestingly, a female tree will still produce fruit even if there isn't a male tree close by to pollinate it. The fruits produced this way look normal on the outside, but contain no seeds. Fruits produced from pollinated flowers contain up to 200 somewhat flattened seeds, along with a large quantity of bitter white latex sap, and are quite tough in texture. The fruits, which are often called hedge apples, horse apples, or monkey brains, are extremely showy and are by far the best known characteristic of Osage orange, both because they are easy to spot on the tree and because they usually stay right where they fall on the ground until they eventually rot away. Critters don't eat the fruit to any large extent. Squirrels do dig into them for the seeds at times, and songbirds of several species along with northern bobwhite and wild turkeys will eat seeds from broken fruits, but larger mammals tend to leave them alone. Deer, especially older bucks, do consume the fruits at times, but not to the extent they eat preferred fruits like persimmons or apples. The fact that large mammals don't consume hedge apples to any great extent is actually a problem for Osage orange. The current theory is that the large, tough, bitter, and unpalatable hedge apples were in fact sought out by some rather large beasts in the past, mainly giant ground sloths and mammoths. These large animals could easily masticate and ingest the tough roots, and due to their size, they could eat a good quantity of them without the bitter sap making them wish they hadn't. These big critters could also cover a lot of ground in a short time, which allowed the Osage seeds to be spread away from the parent trees. This method of seed dispersal worked well at the time and seemed to be working for several species of Maclura in North America, as evidence shows that there were around 7 Maclura species living in North America in the recent geological past. At what is commonly known as the end of the last ice age, around 11,000 or so years ago, there was only one Maclura left in North America, the Osage orange, and its range had been restricted to that little sliver in what is now Oklahoma, Texas, and parts of Arkansas, and possibly Louisiana. No big deal, right? The ground sloths and mammoths will just eat some hedge apples and move the seeds around. Except there were no ground sloths and mammoths. The paleo hunters had annihilated them and they were now extinct. So the Osage orange was stuck. It could still reproduce. It just didn't have a way of expanding its range. That was until humans discovered it was a very useful tree. First as a top-notch bowwood and a source of tannins by the Native Americans, and later by European settlers as living fence, and then as a nearly indestructible fence post wood. Osage orange was planted far and wide and can now be found all through the areas it once occupied pre-last ice age, and a lot of places it was never native to. So what does that make Osage orange now in its expanded range? Is it native? Is it naturalized? Is it invasive? Currently it is only considered native to parts of Oklahoma, Texas, and Arkansas. Some states consider it non-native and invasive, and many others don't seem to worry about it at all. It is growing on our farm here in Kentucky, and it doesn't seem to spread much, if any. It seems to stay put where it is. It is considered a pioneer species and does do well establishing on disturbed sites with full sun, if the seeds can get there. The only natural means by which the seeds can disperse these days are gravity and flowing water. If the trees are growing on a hill, the fruits can roll down it, and if they are along a stream or river, the water can move them along. But otherwise, the fruits generally stay where they fall and rot right there. The main vector for moving Osage orange seed today is intentional and unintentional planting by humans. What do you think? If Osage orange is growing outside of its small official range, but is still growing within the range it occupied tens of thousands of years ago, what should it be considered? Native? Naturalized? Invasive? I do want to cover one other thing about hedge apples. There's a lot of talk on the internet about them being some kind of super spider repellent. I'm not sure where this got started, but I can tell you from personal observation that spiders and their cousins, the harvestmen, you probably know them as daddy longlegs, will crawl all over hedge apples with zero care. I have even seen spiders make ground webs around the fallen fruit. Iowa State did a big study on hedge apples and found they have zero repellent properties towards spiders. They did find that hedge apples contain some compounds that are repellent to certain insects, but at much higher concentrations than are naturally found occurring in the fruit. The Osage orange is a super interesting native tree that managed to hang on after its range was reduced by a glacial advance and its main source of seed dispersal was wiped out by Stone Age hunters. Its usefulness to humans prompted it to be planted widely and allowed it to regain much of the range it once inhabited. Today there is debate about how this tree should be viewed ecologically, but its future as a species seems secure, unlike one of its relatives, the red mulberry, Morus rubra, which is facing troubles from invasive mulberry species. You can learn all about the amazing red mulberry in this video, and be sure to take some time and enjoy nature in your backyard.